Hi, my name is Jacob Anderson, and this is my technical presentation, and I'm going to talk today about what a web API is, and how they work, how they should be used, why they're used, um, all the different features about them, um, even some examples and how to understand them. So, first things first, what is a web API? Well, it's actually an acronym. API stands for Application Programming Interface. Uh, and APIs are everywhere. They're all over the place. They're used every single day with almost every single thing that we do. So what they do and what they are and how they benefit a programmer is they're kind of like building blocks for new software. So this is really cool and really important because uh, it allows us as developers to create new software that incorporates a whole bunch of different functions and functionality that we would never be able to get on our own because that functionality might be too complex or it might be too costly or something like that. Whereas for Google or Amazon or GitHub, they all have APIs that they have developed and maintained, which we can as developers can use mostly for free. Most APIs are free, but they act as building blocks because it allows us to use the functionality that Google has developed in our own programs, which is really cool. Or not specifically Google, but any API. Typically they typically house a series of methods and functions that are accessible to the public that may or may not return uh, something. And by something I mean data. So usually they process a request by the programmer or developer, and then they usually will return some sort of response in the form of like a JSON file of data. Um, and I'm quoting here, it's the part of the servers that receives requests and sends responses, quoting one of my sources. Uh, Anyways, they're really important for modern day development because they allow us to do a whole lot of new stuff without having to worry about getting the functionality. So, uh, how do web APIs work? So, a great example from one of my resources that I got was that they act like a waiter in a restaurant. The customer comes in, the waiter hands them a list of food items or orders, and the customer orders some food. The waiter takes it to the kitchen acting as the server in this case, and then the kitchen completes the order. The waiter takes it back to the customer, just like uh, our requests and responses would be by the API. So the programmer, in this case the customer, would typically make a request to the API, usually through the form of the HTTP request, um, and they point it at a dedicated URL that the company that created the API has set up, and then the API would turn data to the programmer that the programmer could then use, usually in the form of a JSON file. So why do we use web APIs? Well, I kind of touched on this earlier, but it definitely simplifies programming development. It allows us to do it gives us the building blocks so that we don't have to recreate functionality for our own software when somebody out there might have already done it, might have already done it better, might have done it faster and more resources. Also, APIs are actually really well documented and maintained. The biggest tech companies in the world all have a list of numerous amounts of APIs that all do different things. Excuse me. Google has APIs, Amazon, GitHub, Microsoft, Facebook. They all have APIs that do different things. A lot of the time that it incorporates their own technology, but it allows us as programmers to incorporate their technology into what we're developing. And it also adds an extra layer of security, and it acts as the middleman between the server and the user. So it doesn't allow the user's device to be fully exposed to the server or vice versa, which just makes it more secure. And finally, because they're really accessible to everybody and anybody can use them as long as they have the right HTTP request and the format for it, and it allows any developer to enhance their program by using these APIs. So these are my references. I had 4 different articles that I pulled from. Thank you for listening to my presentation.